Welcome to the Hidden Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Hargrove, and today we're going to be talking about building rapport and connection. In a world that's full of distractions and constant demands of our time, especially as leaders, it's easy to overlook the importance of connection. But true rapport, the kind that inspires, that builds trust, respect, and even collaboration, it starts with the simple practice of being fully present with the person that's right in front of you. And today we're going to be diving into how being intentional with your presence helps you build meaningful connections and strong relationships. Whether you're a leader building a team, or a parent strengthening your family, or someone who simply wants to connect on a deeper level, this episode is just for you. And I want you to think about this big idea. The foundation of rapport is built one moment at a time by making the person in front of you feel seen, heard, and valued. Connection doesn't require these big gestures. It starts with the attention and intention of the person that you have right in front of you. So let's jump in and explore how being present can build you that lasting rapport and authentic relationships. So we're going to talk about 6 ways to build that rapport and connection through presence. So number 1 is rapport starts with genuine attention. Rapport begins with making someone feel like they are the most important person in the room. Think about it. Have you ever spoken with someone who clearly was distracted, always looking over their shoulder, not making eye contact, glancing at their phone, or mentally just somewhere else? It probably made you feel like that you didn't really matter at that moment, that you didn't feel valuable. Now imagine the opposite, someone that leans in, makes eye contact, and truly listens to you. You feel valued, respected, and connected. And that's the power of genuine attention. And I want to give you a couple of examples before going on to other scenes. For me, I remember one time I went to this pastors conference, and I felt really, like the smallest person in the room. I was the youngest pastor there, one of the smallest churches there, and I felt like really insignificant. And I was kind of keeping my head low. And there's at one point where there was like this luncheon table to where we're at different round tables, and at one point, one of the main leaders of the church came up and was trying to make conversation with the individual pastors, building these individual connections. And they came and they started asking me questions, and I actually thought for a moment oh wow, they're talking to me. And as I was talking and sharing, it's almost like in a flip switch. Once they felt like they had given enough time, they just switched to the next person. Oh, didn't you do this? And they just completely broke conversation and connection. And in that single moment, I realized that none of it was sincere. It was just this very fabricated talking to one individual after another to be able to check off a box. It's very insincere, and I never went back to that conference. It really just that insincerity made that fake rapport just fleeting. It wasn't real. And that's what we often look at building rapport of is we're checking off the box and moving to the next. But what I'm suggesting is for that attention that you're giving to be truly genuine. Really imagine that you're trying to learn about somebody for a moment. And it's something that should be done with sincerity of heart. You're not just checking off a box, but you're seeing this person as a person, as a mom, as a dad that's cared about, that is created in God's image, whatever you want to say. But you have to really eliminate these distractions, yes, but consider that this should be done out of sincerity. Now, number 2 is connection grows when you prioritize people. Building rapport requires prioritizing people over tasks or schedules. It's easy to get caught up in what's next, especially in leadership. But the strongest connections happen when you treat the person in front of you as if they're as your priority in the moment. There's a saying: the most important person that you should be thinking about is the one that's right in front of you. And it's a mindset shift for you to understand that this person isn't the one, even if they're not the one that's on your calendar for later. It's just simply the person that you're speaking to right now, the one that's right in front of you. And when you make people feel valued in the moment, trust and rapport naturally follows. For me, a situation recently was, as many of you know, I go to different like recovery centers and share workshops and messages. And at one place that I was going to, we were waiting outside the room that we were going to have the workshop in, and as I was waiting for the staff to come unlock the door, there was a person there that I had met the previous week, and I just said, making conversation, said, "How has your week been?" And they started telling me their week, and they started saying that they had a family visitation, and they were really like just like sharing how it was, but it was meaningful to them. And then in mid conversation, like kind of like a quarter way through, they came and opened the door and like, "Okay, y'all can go in." And instead of breaking to the next thing, like, "Oh, let's talk afterwards," or like trying to, it's like we got stuff to do. It could have been reasonable for me to break that conversation and just move along. But instead, I stayed completely engaged because I wanted to hear the end of his story. And there was a point where like all these other people were going in, almost everyone was already in there while I'm still waiting outside talking to this guy. And to the point where he's even noticing that everyone is in except for us, but he continues his story and he finishes it. And after then we go inside. I finished the whole thing. Because again, the reason why did I do that? Because I really believe that the most important person is the one right in front of me. We'll get to the workshop eventually, but this person has something to share. And so we go through the whole thing. Afterwards, that guy comes up to me, and with tears in his eyes, he tells me, "Thank you for listening to my story earlier." Like, it literally impacted his heart so much to where he's holding back tears and says, "Can I give you a hug?" And it just like meant so much to him that I listened to all of his story without rushing to the next thing. And it's those kinds of impacts that inspire people, whether it's people that you're trying to minister to or teach, lead, whatever, or people on your team. You are building meaningful connection by making them, the person in front of you, the most important person at the time. Today's episode is brought to you by my new book, Feed My Sheep, a 90-day devotional, is out now. You can order it either on my website, homerhargrove.com, or you can order it on Amazon. And if you do, please leave a rating and review letting me know what you think about the book. It really would mean a lot to me, and it really helps support this channel. Again, that is Feed My Sheep. That being said, let's get back to today's episode. Now, let's go into number 3, which is active listening and how it builds trust. One of the fastest ways to build rapport is through active listening, and people feel connected to you when they feel heard, not just on that surface level, but at a deeper level. And active listening is more than just nodding and waiting for your turn to speak. It's about engaging fully in what the other person is saying, asking questions, reflecting back on what you hear. When I'm talking to somebody, I really like to learn about what it is that they're saying. And there's times where people have even, from the side, have been curious if I'm asking too invasive questions. But if someone makes even when I did student ministry, if there was a student that would make a comment saying, "Yeah," and then I went to my dad's house, I would very much show that I was listening because I was asking about it. Like, "Oh, so are your parents divorced?" And I would continue to ask on information that they were sharing. And people weren't offended by me asking this. In fact, by the end of it, they felt, I would ask them like, "Have you told anybody else about this?" I'm like, "No, you're the only person that's really asked me." And it's like there was a stronger connection built because I was actively listening what they were saying. You can't just check off the boxes when it comes to rapport. You can't do it insincerely. You can't do it with the mindset that you are using a person as a means to an end. You have to make the person that end result, and active listening is one of the ways that we do that. Start in the heart and then practice it out loud. Now, number 4 is small gestures create big connections. Building rapport doesn't require these big gestures or motives. Sometimes it's just like these little things that matter most. A smile, remembering a person's name, asking about their day, And even following up on y'all's last conversation, like, hey, how did it go with your weekend? I know you felt a little anxious about it. Things like that. And it's the small, consistent actions that show people that you do care. And over time, these moments of connection build a stronger foundation for rapport. People will actually trust you because they realize you're a real person, that you're not just going through the motions, but that you are genuine in all of this rapport building and all of this connection. Now, number 5 is empathy deepens connection. True rapport isn't just about sacrifice level, it's not just about that surface level connection. It's about understanding and relating to others on a deeper level. Empathy is that bridge that we connect with others with. When you take the time to see things from someone else's perspective, you create space for understanding, for connection. And empathy doesn't mean solving their problems. It means acknowledging their experiences and standing with them in it. When I'm talking to somebody and they're talking about something that makes them happy or sad, I can acknowledge that, and I can say, like, so how do you feel about that? Man, that sounds like it was an intense scenario. Did it how did it affect you emotionally? And they'll share. I'm like, oh man, wow, I can't imagine being through that. You're connecting with them on an emotional level rather than I want to just paint a scenario like what we commonly do as leaders is someone might be sharing their heart, and then without being asked, we start trying to give advice to that scenario. Like, well, maybe you should try telling them this. Well, they didn't really ask you, did they? Sometimes you just got to take off this idea that you are trying to teach somebody something, or that you are superior than anyone else, that you know everything. Just take all that off and be a human being. That is building rapport and connection. Not showing them that you're smart, not showing them that you would know what to do, just showing them that you understand, that you can connect with how they feel. And finally, I want us to understand that presence elevates everyday interactions. Rapport isn't just about these formal meetings or big conversations. It's built in sometimes the everyday moments. A quick chat in the hallway, a kind word at the end of an email, genuine compliments can strengthen these kinds of connections. But even just texting somebody like, hey, how are you doing? Imagine to understand that when you're fully present, even in the small interactions, it leaves a lasting impact. As a small example, when someone asks me to pray for them, I'll typically respond with a voice memo of me praying for them, rather than just saying like a text with the hands emoji. I'll send the actual voice memo. This is me praying for you, and I just pray for them. And again, that's not like a big thing. It's these small things that it's almost like not what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it that makes the biggest difference when it comes to building rapport and connection. So let's recap the 6 keys to build rapport and connection through presence. Number 1 was rapport starts with genuine attention. Eliminate distractions. Focus fully. When I meet with somebody, especially one-on-one, I don't even put my phone out. I don't want my phone on the table. Even if I'm getting a text or something, I won't check my phone. I want to be fully engaged with that person without any distractions. Prioritize people over tasks. Treat the person in front of you as your priority. They're not just a means to an end. They are the end to the means. Active listening builds trust. Listen to understand, not just to respond. Really build that connection in a genuine way. Small gestures create big connections. The little things show people that you care. And number 5, empathy deepens connection, and you should seek to understand and acknowledge others' experiences. Don't seek to give advice. Sometimes you just need to be there to connect emotionally with someone. Be a human being. And finally, number 6, presence elevates everyday interactions. Even small moments can strengthen relationships. It's not always what you do, but how you do it. So all that being said, building rapport isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional and showing up fully, valuing the person in front of you it empowers you to create that space for trust, understanding, and meaningful connection. So as we wrap up today, I just have this challenge for this week. Slow down and focus on one person at a time, whether it's a team member, whether it's a loved one, maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your spouse, or even a complete stranger. If you are a person that hands out money to a homeless person that asks, why don't, instead of just handing them that money, why don't you ask them what their name is and have a real conversation with a complete stranger? Treat these interactions as opportunities to build rapport and connection. And if this episode was meaningful for you, or edifying to your leadership or you in your life right now, could you do me a favor? Could you leave a rating and review for this podcast? It really helped me out, help others be able to see the show in their feed. But until next time, have a great life. Well, there you have it. I hope that this episode was meaningful and edifying for your leadership and your growth within your ministry and organization. Could you do me a favor? Could you leave a rating and review for this podcast? It'd really help me out and help others be able to see this show in their feed. You can also visit homerhargrove.com to be able to learn more, connect, or become one of our supporters. Until next time, have a great life.